Hello, everyone, and welcome into this week's RGV Sports Google Hangout. I'm Greg Luca, and I'm joined here by Mario. Mario, say hi.
Hey Greg,
How's it going, man?
pretty
Uh,
good, pretty good.
Here on the Hangout, we're going to look back at Week 9, and we're going to look ahead to Week 10. We don't have Dennis with us this week, so it's going to be a little bit of an abbreviated show, but we're going to hit all the high points from the last week and next week in Valley football. So let's start off with a game Thursday that you covered, Mario. Westlake 35, PSJ Memorial 17. Interesting score for me. Westlake has really come on strong after a 1-4 start. Seems very impressive to me and is now tied atop the district standings. What jumped out to you from that game?
Um, Westlake High had four running backs, the rest were over 100 yards apiece. Westlake High had 500 yards of offense, zero passing. So that's pretty impressive there. They attempted, I think it was like four passing attempts, didn't connect on any. Game went back and forth through the first half, and Westlake pulled ahead in the third quarter when the running back, I think it was Gonzalez, I think I can't remember. Huh?
Eric Gonzalez. He's
Yeah,
usually the
Gonzalez.
go-to guy.
Yeah, he had two touchdowns in the third quarter. Team pulled away from there. With that, they didn't want to say it really, but I mean, I think that pretty much locks in their playoff spot, which is pretty impressive considering their 1-4 start. They won three in a row now, I believe, and they were tied that day with PSG North, but I think PSG North lost, if I'm not mistaken, so they dropped.
I got it right here. Yeah, PSJ North lost to Westlake East, another team that didn't pass for any yardage.
Yeah.
So now those two are. So now Westlake and Westlake East are tied atop 31-6A, but I think I think literally everybody is still alive if the chips fall right. There's a big matchup this week that'll go a long way to determining how it plays out from there, but we'll talk about that a little later. Over in 36A, the game of the week was McAllen Memorial 42, McAllen High 28. This was about Memorial jumping out to a huge lead, scoring touchdowns on their first 5 possessions, doing a lot of what they do. Trevor Spates runs for 300 yards in this game, which has become common at this point somehow. Let's see what else happened there. Aaron Villarreal scored 3 touchdowns for them. He has not been involved to that extent usually, and he had a good night for them. DJ Johnson had a touchdown receiving and had another one called back by a penalty. So everything's clicking for the Memorial offense at this point. Those guys are scary. But in the second half, they were slowed a little bit. I think they only had 2 or 3 possessions, but they only scored once. And
Mac High made it close, right?
yeah. Mac High had, let's see, they scored on a long touchdown late in the first half. Then they scored another one on a Hail Mary. And then they scored again on the first possession of the second half. And all of a sudden, it was a 7-point game. So they really made a game of it there, but just couldn't break through with one more scoring drive that they would have needed to actually tie it up, and Memorial ended up leading the whole way in that one. So Memorial is one of 2 undefeated teams in that district now, along with Palmview, who they will play this week, and that's a matchup we'll talk about a little bit later on. I know if Dennis were here, he would want to talk about Mercedes 28, PSJ High 14. Mercedes just keeps climbing up my top 10 poll. Your thoughts on Mercedes?
I've seen Mercedes once this year, and I was impressed. I mean, they really ran away with that win. Just impressed with their quarterback. I mean, when I did the story earlier in the year, I was a little bit surprised that he would be able to play. I mean, he looks more like a linebacker.
Yeah.
But he's got a great arm. He moves well. Just really impressed with what they're able to do there at Mercedes, and I mean they've been doing it all year. I mean, I think they lost the first game of the season, but I mean, ever since then, really, they've been on a roll, and they deserve that spot. They're in the top 10. I think last week, where were they? They were number 5 or 6.
I'm not sure. I can pull it up. I know for me personally, I have them at number 3 heading into next week. I've put them past Mac High as a result of what they did there. But if you ramble on for a second or two, I'll pull up our top 10 for last week.
Well, I know Sherryland was 1. Number 2 was McAllen Memorial. Number 3 was probably Mac High. Number 4 was Edinburgh Villa. And so I'd imagine they'd be somewhere there. I think Mission Vets might have been 7, 8. And Mission Vets is another team that I think might be dropped by one of our voters, considering that no, not Mission Vets, Villa, which beat Rio Grande City 21-20. I think people would expect a little bit more out of Vela, but I think it kind of speaks to Rio Grande City having the potential to bang there against one of the better teams in district.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Can we even pause this thing? I don't know. Hold on.
No.
Are you? You should have it. I will send it again. Did you call?
I tried calling, but
I don't have a missed or anything. I'm
no,
sorry.
not to. I called the main news.
Okay.
I had a call from him. So.
Guys, we almost didn't have a newspaper tomorrow. Okay.
All right.
It should be there. Give me a call if it didn't work out, though.
Okay.
I wonder if this is all going to be in our video. I hope not.
Well, it's behind the scenes, so
We literally don't have a way to edit this, right?
we probably do, but I don't think it's worth the thing. I think people like to see they like us to let them behind the curtain.
Right. Well, I saved the newspaper for tomorrow if it makes anybody feel any better. So
Yeah.
we were talking about the top 10. I know Mercedes was number 5 last week,
Okay.
which I figured out for sure. Where did you have them? Do you know on your own personal poll where they fell in or where they might look next week?
Yeah, I mean they're between 5 and 6, and I think it might be hard for them to leapfrog anyone really because, I mean, I'm probably a little bit biased, but I would argue that District 31 5A is the toughest district in the Valley. They have three. Huh?
Maybe at the top. Actually, I don't know.
Yeah, they have 3 of the top 10 teams. I don't think any other district has that. They don't.
No, I guess Palmview didn't make it in last week, so no. Yeah, okay. That's a decent argument.
Yeah. And so I mean Mission Vets, I don't know. I think Mission Vets has been a little bit disappointing. I kind of thought that they would be doing better, but I mean, you have to give credit to Vela for having the season they're having. I mean, they could finish as good as 9-1 or as bad as 8-2, which is still pretty significant growth from being winless 2 years ago and being 5-5 last season.
Right. I know I moved Vela down a couple spots in my poll as a result of playing the close game with Rio Grande City. I do hold that against them as much as you might want to give them a free pass there, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to just ignore what happened there, so I'm gonna knock them down a little bit, not slightly, but let's see. Number 1 team in our poll figures to again be Sherryland. I don't see why that would change, and you covered their game this week, which was another blowout. 58-6 against Pioneer in the Snakeskin Classic, as you like to call it. Right,
As they like to call it.
Yeah. So
I took a lot of heat for that, by the way, on Twitter from
you should.
you, Dennis, and a few fans. And
It's not a classic the first time, or probably ever.
I think a lot of people caught on to that part, especially when the score got out of hand after halftime.
Right. So anyway, what were the keys to that game, or what did you learn about Sherryland? Anything new?
No, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that they went with Lance Madden at quarterback. I mean, I know he's been starting most of the season, but I'm surprised they didn't give Diego Chrysler more of a look, or Cesar Chapa, their third-string quarterback. I mean, Cesar Chapa went in and was there for a couple series, but I mean, I kind of thought that they had this game in the bag and that they would at least go with someone different to start, but maybe they just wanted to keep stay in rhythm with what they had. And so Lance Madden played. Laredo Guerra scored 2 touchdowns, 1 in the air, 1 on the ground. Biggest thing was that Sherryland returned 2 interceptions for touchdowns, 1 for 26 yards, the other for 36. Defense was always on point. James Cole, who I kind of wonder why he doesn't get more reps. He had to catch a short pass and took it for an 80-yard touchdown. Seems to have one of those in his arsenal every week. And Pioneer is up and down. I kind of don't know what to make of them. I mean, they started 2-0 and then kind of went off from there. And I don't know what team I'm getting from them, which will make things interesting this week when they play Aroma for 4th place in district.
Most definitely. Now, another game I want to talk about before we get into next week is Brownsville Rivera 25, Los Fresnos 13, one of our top 10 teams going down. Rivera with the what was the start? 0-what?
0-6.
0-6, and now is 2-6, 3-6. Where are we?
They've
Either way,
won
turning
2
it
games.
around. And
Whatever
actually,
it is, they're in the playoff hunt.
so I mean, what can you say about this team other than that? I don't know much about them. Do you have anything to offer on these guys, or what makes them
Yeah,
how they
I mean,
managed to do this?
yeah, I mean, this isn't this isn't unusual. I mean, it's like we had talked about earlier in the year. Rivera last year started 0-4 and still made it to the playoffs. This year, I mean, they look to be on pace to do the same thing. And I mean, you could just look at they've really shown spurts where they could play well. I mean, they held Sherry Lynn scoreless offensively. Sherry Lynn beat Rivera off 4 defensive touchdowns, and I mean, Rivera is capable of playing really good defense. I just think that they haven't been able to put it together, and it's not really uncommon of Tom Chavez teams to do that at Rivera. They kind of take a little while to go to get started, and then they peak at the end of the season. And I think that's very much going to happen this season, excuse me, where they just peak at the end as they are right now. And District 32-6, they really isn't that strong, so I think they could sneak in there for a 4th spot. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that's what happens.
Right. I know when they played Westlaco East earlier in the year, they played them close. And I know Coach Mike Burgett was impressed with their performance in that game. So certainly something that jumped out to me about them for a team that, as they kept losing, kept playing people close and kept looking like a legitimate team that might get something going as the season went on. So impressive stuff from them.
Best
Now,
0-6 team, Greg. Best 0-6 team. I don't think
yeah,
they were the best 0-4 team, 0-5, 0-6, and I would argue they're the best 2-win team in the Valley, if they are in fact a 2-win.
well, there was, I don't know, we had some debate about the best 0-4 team. I forget
Really?
who else was in there, but there was certainly some debate. We'll see. We'll see how
Yeah.
it plays out.
Okay.
Looking ahead to next week, game of the week for us at the Monitor is going to be McCallum Memorial and La Jolla Palmview, which we touched on a little bit earlier. This is an interesting test for Palmview to see whether they are legitimate, I think it's fair to say. For a team that's 6-1-1, still have played a lot of close games against some teams that they should probably beat more handily. That's the way Mackay or McCallum Memorial has been handling those same games this year. But this is the first time that they've come up against either Mackay or McCallum Memorial. They played both of them in the final 2 weeks. And right now they are ahead of McCallum High in the standings just by virtue of the fact that Memorial beat Mackay last week. So I guess if they can win this game, they could win the district outright, which is insane for Palmview,
Yeah.
who has never even made the playoffs and never had a winning season. So that'll be a game to keep an eye on from that perspective. In terms of teams actually just hunting to get in the playoffs, in 36A, Roa is playing La Jolla. The winner will likely be the 4th team, and the loser will be out. And in 31-6A, PSJ Memorial is playing Edinburgh North. The loser is out, and the winner will have a good shot at being the 4th team in, but there's a lot that can happen in that district because of how tightly packed it is. The leaders are at 3-1, and the teams in last are at 1-3, so it could go either way the final 2 weeks. And you said you're going to be looking at Roma and Sherryland Pioneer, which is kind of a similar situation?
I will be making, excuse me, I will be making another hour and a half, 2-hour drive to Gladiator Arena in Roma. 40 miles of which is on the street, not an expressway, so quite the trek, and this should be even better than the first time. The first time Roma played Mission Vets without, excuse me, Santos Villarreal. I thought the game would be a little bit close, and I mean, I guess it was 14-0, I think it was. But I mean, much higher stakes this time. Roma, Sherryland Pioneer, both teams. Whoever wins this game will more than likely be will get the 4th spot in district, which again I'm not really too pleased with. I guess with these 17 districts where you allow 4 teams to get in.
Right.
In some of those cases, I think the 4th team really doesn't have as strong a record. Really, they have 2 wins against 2 of the lower teams, and then they beat someone like them, which is what tends to happen, really. So they don't really beat anyone in the top half, and I'm not really a big fan of that. But in this case, I mean, with Roma going up against Sherryland Pioneer, I would bet on Roma. I mean, you know what you're going to get from their defense, and Pioneer is shaky. And if Roma could just put together one drive, one out of 12, 13 offensive drives, or they just put one together where they score and they play as well defensively as they have for most of the season, I think they could beat Pioneer this week.
Right. Now, some other ones to watch. I think in Dennis's district, he would point us to Mercedes and PSJ Southwest. I think that has playoff implications for Southwest, and it's another case like Palmview Memorial, where a team having a decent season is now going up against a team that appears to be in another echelon, but they get a chance to prove themselves in this one. And then in the lower valley, in the metro area, I think we're probably looking at Brownsville Vets and Los Fresnos would probably be the game to watch this week over on that end.
Any opinion on that one, Greg? What do you think?
Wow.
Putting you
I
on the
think
spot.
Los Fresnos. I think I like Los Fresnos. I know Brownsville Vets runs the ball well, but Los Fresnos has had some good results this year, and I think despite their loss, I might be keeping them in my top 10. I think I just couldn't find another team. So
Really?
I still feel pretty good about them.
What about San Benito?
I already got them in there. They're already
Yeah.
number 7.
Well, Los Fresnos lost this week, and I'm blanking on who they lost to.
They lost to Rivera, I think. That was the game we just talked about.
Was it?
No, yeah.
Okay.
It's 25-13.
Okay. So Los Fresnos, I mean, that would be huge if Veterans pulls out a win over there. Los Fresnos, I think they pretty much have like a pretty good home field advantage. Veterans has beat Los Fresnos once, I think, and I covered that game a couple years ago. But I mean, just really unpredictable at this point. Los Fresnos has had losses against teams that you wouldn't expect they would lose to, and Veterans, by the same token, the last couple of weeks they've kind of slipped. So kind of hard to predict who might come out with a win in that one.
Right. All right, well, I guess that about covers everything I wanted to get to in terms of Week 9 and Week 10 for this show. I don't know if you have anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, I mean, big game next week in my district is Pioneer at Roma. Following week is Mission Vets Edinburgh Villa to decide more than likely who will get second place, in District 31-5A. So that should be another big match.
Yeah, the whole last 2 weeks there's going to be a lot of very interesting stuff as far as the playoffs go. Just because, like we talked about with the 7 teams, there being so many openings and so much potential there. But now I have to.
One of the things I missed too from the Snakeskin Classic. Biggest takeaway was Sherryland securing a playoff berth. They're 4-0 now in district, so worst case scenario they finish 4-2, and judging by the district, I mean district, the 4th place team will more than likely finish with a 3-3 record. So
right, it's good that they got that locked up. I was worried about them whether they would make it or not. So it's good that now that that's secured. I'm glad.
Well, what do you do at that point, though? I mean, would you, if you were a coach, Craig, would you put your bench and rest your starters? Would you tinker with things? Like, what would you do? I mean, I think some coaches just like to stay in rhythm, but I think it wouldn't hurt to get some players rest at this point of the season. With 2 weeks, the playoffs doesn't start for another 3 weeks.
I think what I would do is I would probably keep practice about the same, maybe tone it back a little bit, and then play the guys for a half every week.
Yeah.
I think you want them to have the, getting ready, the warm up, the game experience, but then also being able to take it easy a little bit and not risk injury as the game wears on and you get tired or whatever.
In case Ron Adame is listening to the Hangout.
That would be our advice, right? We'll see what he actually does, but...
Yeah.
All right, I have to make sure that the guy with the thing actually got the thing and that we can actually print a newspaper tomorrow. So I think we're going to call this one a show. For Mario, I'm Greg, and we'll see you guys next week.